How to catch the dangerous lies that your brain keeps repeating, and how to silence it forever. Your mind is not a mirror of truth, it's a storyteller, and not always an honest one. Every day without your consent, it fabricates narratives that explain your fears, justify your limitations, and reinforce who you believe you are. The brain repeats these stories so often that they stop sounding like lies and start feeling like reality. But what if your suffering isn't born from the world outside, but from the unexamined voice inside? What if the prison you feel is made of thoughts you've mistaken for facts? Neuroscience shows that the human brain is designed to seek familiarity, not truth. Dopamine rewards patterns it recognizes, even if those patterns are destructive. Your mind would rather cling to the comfort of a lie than risk the chaos of uncertainty. That's why it recycles old wounds, old fears, old narratives, because they feel safe even when they hurt. This is the first betrayal of the brain. It mistakes repetition for wisdom and fear for protection. But here's what most people never realize. The brain isn't trying to deceive you out of malice. It's doing exactly what evolution trained it to do: conserve energy, predict danger, and keep you alive. The problem is that the world your brain evolved to survive no longer exists. The tiger outside the cave has become the criticism on social media, the memory of a mistake, the whisper that says, "You'll fail again." Your nervous system reacts as if those thoughts were life-threatening. Cortisol floods your body, your heart races, your focus narrows, and without noticing, you start obeying the voice in your head as if it were divine truth. This video is not about silencing your thoughts. It's about catching them in the act, understanding how the mind manufactures deception, and how to reprogram it using awareness, science, and structure. You'll see how lies form in the neural circuits, how they survive through emotional reinforcement, and how to dismantle them with the same precision your brain used to build them. The goal isn't to think positive, it's to think clearly, to recognize that not every thought deserves your belief, to realize that clarity isn't the absence of noise, but the ability to see through it. So today, we begin a rebellion, not against the world, but against the false narratives within it. Because the moment you stop believing every thought you think is the moment you become free. The echo chamber of the mind. The brain loves repetition. It's how it learns language, builds habits, and constructs identity. But the same mechanism that allows us to master skills also traps us in invisible loops of self-deception. When you tell yourself you're not enough, your neurons record it like a song on repeat. Each repetition strengthens the pathway until it becomes automatic, a reflex disguised as truth. Soon, your mind doesn't need evidence to confirm the belief. It simply replays it because it feels familiar. Psychologists call this cognitive resonance, the tendency of the brain to prefer consistency over accuracy. It will choose the comfort of a repeated falsehood over the discomfort of a new possibility. That's why lies echo. They sound convincing not because they're real, but because they're old. Neuroscientifically, this is the principle of Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together wire together. Each time a negative thought loops through your cortex, it strengthens its own circuitry. It becomes easier to think again tomorrow, and harder to doubt. Eventually, you start living in a mental ecosystem where every thought validates the next, and every fear confirms the last. You don't just believe the lie, you become it. But there's a way to interrupt the echo. The first step is awareness without judgment. When you catch the thought, "I'm not capable, it's too late, no one understands me," pause. Don't fight it and don't feed it. Observe it like you would an echo in a canyon. The sound fades when you stop shouting back. In that moment, you begin to detach your identity from your thinking. The thought remains, but its authority dissolves. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Modern neuroscience would say the same. Your brain becomes whatever you repeatedly believe. So, to catch the dangerous lies of the mind, you must first create silence long enough to hear them. Because only in silence can you tell the difference between truth and noise. The echo chamber is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It reveals where you're still asleep, where your beliefs have become your reality. When you stop mistaking repetition for truth, you awaken to the possibility that the voice in your head is not you. It's just an echo waiting to fade. The algorithm inside your head. Your mind works like a biological algorithm, constantly processing emotional data, predicting outcomes, and filtering the world according to what it already believes. Every thought, emotion, and memory becomes input that trains this inner system to decide what you notice and what you ignore. Just like a digital algorithm learns from your clicks, your brain learns from your attention. The more often you focus on fear, guilt, or failure, the more your mental feed fills with the same themes, until reality itself becomes distorted by selective perception. From a neuroscientific perspective, this is known as predictive processing. Your brain doesn't wait for truth. It guesses what reality should look like, then bends your perception to fit that guess. This process happens in milliseconds, below awareness, guided by emotional history rather than logic. If you've been rejected in the past, the algorithm anticipates rejection again. If you've failed before, it quietly assumes failure is the safest forecast. It builds a world that feels familiar, not accurate. And that's how illusion becomes identity. But the danger lies in how self-reinforcing this system is. Once the algorithm identifies a pattern, I'm not good enough. People always leave. Nothing ever works for me. It starts curating your attention to confirm it. It ignores contradictory data. Compliments slide past unnoticed. Opportunities feel unreal. The algorithm edits out hope because hope doesn't match its learned parameters. This is how mental rigidity forms, not from ignorance, but from automated focus. Andrew Huberman often explains that the human brain is a prediction machine powered by emotional bias. Every prediction triggers a neurochemical response. When your brain correctly predicts pain or disappointment, it receives a small dopamine hit for accuracy, even if that accuracy hurts you. This is the paradox. Your brain rewards itself for being right about the wrong things. That's why you can be addicted to pessimism and not even realize it. Accuracy becomes more satisfying than change. To reprogram this algorithm, you must train your awareness to act like a new data filter.
The process is simple but not easy. Bring conscious attention to what the brain automatically ignores. Gratitude, hope, calm. These are not passive emotions. They are cognitive rewrites. Each moment you deliberately focus on something contrary to your old narrative, you send the brain new data. It resists at first, like a stubborn machine, but neuroplasticity guarantees adaptation through consistency. You're not fighting the algorithm, you're retraining it.
Think of it this way. Your brain is not lying out of cruelty. It's optimizing for efficiency. But efficiency without awareness becomes blindness. You can't change what you don't observe. Once you begin to see your mental algorithm as programmable, the illusion of permanence dissolves. What once felt like who I am becomes what I've trained myself to see. That's the moment power returns, not because the world changed, but because your filter did. The algorithm in your head can either imprison you or free you. It depends on what data you choose to feed it. Awareness is the new input. Truth is the new code, and every time you choose clarity over comfort, you rewrite the operating system of your mind. The reward trap, when dopamine betrays you. Dopamine was never designed to make you happy. It was designed to make you chase. It's the molecule of pursuit, not fulfillment, a chemical whisper that says, something out there will complete you. In the right balance, it fuels progress and resilience. But when hijacked by emotional repetition, it becomes the architect of self-sabotage. The same force that drives ambition can also chain you to destructive cycles of thought and behavior, because dopamine doesn't distinguish between healthy goals and harmful habits. It only rewards what's repeated. Every time you replay an anxious thought or indulge a fear, your brain receives a small chemical reward, not for the truth of the thought, but for its familiarity. The circuit that fires gets stronger, and soon, the brain starts to crave the same emotional tone the way it craves caffeine or sugar. It's not that you enjoy suffering, it's that your neurons have learned to expect it. The brain mistakes mental chaos for stimulation, and peace begins to feel boring. This is how addiction to inner turmoil forms. Quiet becomes unbearable because it doesn't deliver a dopamine spike. Neuroscience confirms this paradox. The brain's reward system responds to anticipation, not satisfaction. It releases dopamine before the result, in the moment of craving, prediction, or worry. That's why you can spend hours overthinking or scrolling through negativity and still feel trapped. Your brain keeps rewarding the behavior that creates your pain. The body feels alive in the chase, even if the chase leads nowhere. Andrew Huberman often reminds us that dopamine is context-dependent. When linked to fear or self-criticism, it trains the mind to associate stress with control. You start to believe that constant mental noise is proof of productivity, that exhaustion equals effort, that rest equals weakness. In reality, you're just reinforcing a neurochemical illusion. The more the mind chases control, the more control it loses. The reward system becomes a trap, a self-feeding loop of craving and collapse. Breaking this cycle requires more than willpower. It requires rewiring the brain's relationship with reward. The key is to shift dopamine from reaction to intention. You do this by rewarding moments of clarity, not compulsion. When you notice a negative thought and choose not to follow it, that's a victory your brain must learn to recognize. Pair that awareness with a small physical act, a deep breath, a posture reset, a conscious pause. Over time, these micro-signals retrain your reward system to associate calm with satisfaction instead of chaos. This is the essence of neuroplastic recovery, teaching the brain that peace is productive, that stillness can feel alive, that you can achieve without adrenaline, think without tension, and act without fear. The mind will resist, but resistance is proof of rewiring in progress. When dopamine stops being your master and becomes your messenger, you no longer chase lies disguised as comfort. You begin to experience motivation without anxiety, drive without desperation. And that's when you realize the truth. Happiness was never hidden in the chase. It was waiting in the stillness you kept running from. The language of self-deception. Every lie your brain tells you hides inside language. Not in words spoken aloud, but in the silent sentences you repeat to yourself each day. I can't. I always mess things up. They never care. These aren't facts. They're linguistic distortions, shaped by emotion and reinforced by repetition. Over time, they become the grammar of your identity. The words you use to describe your experience determine how your brain interprets reality. Change the words, and you begin to change the world you see. Cognitive behavioral therapy calls these distortions automatic thoughts, mental shortcuts that simplify reality at the cost of truth. When the mind feels pain, it exaggerates. When it feels fear, it generalizes. When it feels shame, it assumes permanence. Each of these linguistic shortcuts, always, never, everyone, nothing, locks you into absolutes that don't exist in nature. The brain clings to these simplifications because they make chaos feel predictable. It's easier to say, "I'll never succeed," than to live with the uncertainty of trying again. But every time you use language to reduce reality, you reduce yourself. Aristotle once said that reason can be corrupted by emotion. In the brain, that corruption occurs through the bridge of language. Emotion gives language its intensity. Language gives emotion its direction. Together, they create the inner narrative that defines behavior. A single phrase, "I don't deserve peace," can alter hormonal balance, activating the stress response as if it were a physical threat. Your body doesn't argue with words, it obeys them. This is how syntax becomes biology and thought becomes fate. Jordan Peterson often reminds us that the precision of language is the foundation of mental order. When your words are vague, your life becomes chaotic. When your definitions are clear, your path becomes structured. Saying, "I'm worthless," is not the same as saying, "I feel inadequate right now." One freezes identity, the other describes a temporary state. The first keeps you trapped, the second opens a door. The difference between those sentences can mean the difference between despair and resilience. To expose the lies hidden in your language, you must listen as if you were analyzing someone else's speech. Detach. Observe the tone, the exaggerations, the invisible assumptions. Every time you catch yourself using an absolute, always, never, forever, pause. Ask, is that literally true or emotionally true? The moment you distinguish the two, the deception loses power. Awareness creates distance, and distance gives you choice. René Descartes believed clarity of thought was the highest form of liberation. In this age of internal noise, clarity begins with verbal honesty. When you learn to name things precisely, your fears, your desires, your boundaries, your inner world stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like architecture. The words become structure, not prison walls. The voice in your head transforms from critic to translator, from liar to guide. Language, when used consciously, is the scalpel that cuts through illusion. When used unconsciously, it becomes the mask that keeps illusion alive. The way you speak to yourself is not a reflection of who you are. It's the program your brain follows. Speak truthfully, and the program begins to rewrite itself. Neural ghosts, memories that still control you. The past doesn't live in time. It lives in your nervous system. Every experience you've had, every wound you've survived, leaves behind a trace in the architecture of your brain. Most of those memories fade quietly, but some remain alive, pulsing beneath awareness. These are the neural ghosts, emotional imprints that no longer belong to the present, but continue to dictate how you feel, react, and think. They are the unseen hands steering your behavior, while you convince yourself you're acting freely. Neuroscience shows that the brain doesn't store memories as neutral facts, but as emotionally charged patterns. The amygdala tags significant experiences with fear, shame, or joy, ensuring they're easily reactivated. When something in your environment resembles a past threat, a tone of voice, a gesture, even a smell, your brain replays the old emotional film, flooding your body with the same chemistry: cortisol, adrenaline, muscle tension. You're not reacting to what's happening, you're reacting to what happened. The mind confuses recognition with reality. This is why healing feels like a battle against invisible forces. You can't reason with a memory encoded in emotion. Logic speaks to the cortex, trauma speaks to the body. That's why you might understand, intellectually, that you're safe now, but your physiology still responds as if you're in danger. The ghost lives in your cells, not your conscious thoughts. As Joe Dispenza explains, the body can become the unconscious mind, repeating emotional states as if they were habits. The past becomes a chemical addiction. You feel the same pain, not because it's happening, but because your neurons expect it. The tragedy is that the brain believes it's protecting you. It resurrects these ghosts to warn you, not to harm you. Yet each reactivation strengthens the old network. Every time you relive humiliation, the pathway grows thicker, the emotional film gains definition, and the illusion of danger becomes sharper. The more vividly you remember, the more the brain interprets the memory as current reality. The ghost grows stronger with attention. But the same mechanism that builds these ghosts can dissolve them. Neuroplasticity means the brain is constantly editing itself. When you consciously experience the same memory while anchored in calm awareness, you send a contradictory signal: safety within the memory. That mismatch begins to rewire the association. The ghost weakens not by being erased, but by being reinterpreted. You're not denying the pain, you're teaching your brain that the danger is over. This is the art of emotional alchemy, transforming memory from prison into wisdom. Each time you stay present while an old wound surfaces, you reclaim the energy once trapped in survival. You move from reliving to observing, from reacting to understanding. The memory remains, but its power to define you disappears. Neural ghosts only haunt minds that keep mistaking the past for proof. When you stop arguing with your memories and start teaching your body a new emotional truth, the ghosts lose their audience. And in that silence, you realize they were never haunting you. They were waiting to be seen, understood, and finally set free. The biology of fear loops. Fear is not just an emotion. It's a biological algorithm designed to keep you alive. But what once protected you from predators now turns against you in the modern world. The same neural machinery that helped ancient humans survive danger now keeps you trapped in cycles of anxiety, hesitation, and self-doubt. The brain hasn't evolved fast enough to distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. It reacts to a critical comment, a financial worry, or a painful memory as if your life were on the line. The result is a fear loop, a biochemical feedback system that teaches the mind to live in permanent defense mode. At the center of this loop is the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. When it detects potential danger, it sends rapid signals to the hypothalamus, triggering the release of adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your attention narrows. This reaction lasts only seconds, but when repeated daily, through chronic stress, overthinking, or emotional rumination, the loop becomes self-sustaining. The brain starts scanning for threats even when none exist, creating anxiety not from the world, but from habit. Fear becomes your default operating system. Andrew Huberman describes this as the amygdala prefrontal tug-of-war. The amygdala screams, "Danger!" while the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, tries to explain that you're safe. But when cortisol levels rise, logic loses power. Your thoughts bend to fit the emotion. You start to justify the fear, creating narratives that make it feel valid. They must be talking about me. This will go wrong. I'm not ready. The story is an afterthought. The chemistry came first. The lie feels true because your body already decided it was. Breaking this biological cycle requires interrupting the chemistry before it recruits your thoughts. One of the simplest, most scientifically validated tools is the physiological sigh. 2 quick inhales, followed by a slow exhale. This breathing pattern activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering heart rate and signaling safety to the amygdala. In that calm space, the prefrontal cortex regains control. You can think clearly again, not because you forced positivity, but because you shifted biology. Over time, repeated calm breaks the loop. Each moment of physiological regulation teaches the brain that peace is survivable. The amygdala learns that silence isn't danger. This is the essence of emotional resilience, not the absence of fear, but the ability to reset quickly. When your body knows how to return to balance, your thoughts no longer spiral into chaos. You start responding to life instead of reacting to it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Modern neuroscience would add, that estimate is shaped by chemistry. You can't always stop fear from arising, but you can end its repetition. When you regulate the body, the story loses its urgency. When you breathe with intention, the brain rewrites its predictions. Fear loops fade, not through courage alone, but through physiology understood. Your brain is not your enemy. It's an overprotective guardian. When you learn to calm its alarms instead of believing them, you stop surviving imagined battles and start living with real freedom. The body learns safety, the mind follows, and the loop finally breaks. The observer awakens. There comes a moment when you stop fighting your thoughts and start watching them. A quiet shift occurs, subtle but irreversible. You realize that the storm inside your head is not you. It's something you're observing. That recognition marks the birth of consciousness beyond identity. The observer awakens, and for the first time, you experience a strange kind of power. The ability to see your mind without becoming it. René Descartes once declared, "I think, therefore I am." But in the age of constant noise, perhaps the truer statement is, "I see my thinking, therefore I am free." Modern neuroscience confirms what ancient philosophers intuited. Awareness changes the brain. When you observe your thoughts without reacting, your prefrontal cortex, the center of self-regulation, activates. The amygdala, the emotional alarm, begins to quiet. In that silence, space appears between stimulus and response. And in that space, transformation begins. Jordan Peterson often describes consciousness as the bridge between chaos and order. Chaos is emotion without structure. Order is thought guided by awareness. Most people live trapped on the emotional side, ruled by the same inner narratives that once served as protection. But when awareness steps in, it doesn't destroy emotion. It organizes it. You begin to understand that anger is just energy misdirected. Fear is anticipation of loss, and sadness is attachment to what no longer is. Awareness turns feelings into information rather than identity. The awakening of the observer is not a mystical escape from thought. It's a scientific reorganization of perception. Studies in mindfulness and neuroplasticity show that observing a thought engages neural circuits associated with detachment and self-control. Each time you do it, you weaken the automatic grip of old patterns. The brain learns a new rule. Thoughts are events, not orders. They arise, they pass, and they mean nothing until you assign meaning to them. The power lies in choosing which ones deserve your attention. Imagine standing at the edge of a river, watching your thoughts drift by like leaves on the surface. Some are dark, some are beautiful, but none can drag you in unless you reach for them. Most people spend their lives drowning in that river. The observer learns to stay on the shore. That's the essence of resilience. Not avoiding storms, but remaining still enough to see them for what they are. Temporary weather in the sky of consciousness. This awareness doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you precise. You stop wasting energy fighting illusions and start using clarity to act intentionally. The moment you realize this is just a thought, you reclaim authority from the mental algorithm that once ruled you. The observer is both scientist and philosopher, calm, curious, and disciplined. It watches, questions, and chooses with awareness rather than instinct. Awakening the observer is the turning point of inner freedom. Before it, the brain is your master, dictating your emotions and identity. After it, the brain becomes your instrument, a tool you use, not a voice you obey. The mind continues to speak, but the difference is now you're listening from silence. And from that silence, wisdom begins to rise, the kind that doesn't shout, but simply knows. Rewriting the internal code. Once the observer awakens, awareness becomes your new instrument of transformation. You begin to see that your thoughts, emotions, and habits are not destiny. They are programs. Neural codes written long ago by repetition, emotion, and survival instinct. The beauty of the human brain lies in its flexibility. What has been wired can be rewired. Neuroplasticity is not just a scientific concept. It's the biology of rebirth. Each moment of conscious thought becomes a chance to rewrite the internal code that governs your life. To reprogram your mind, you must first understand how the old code operates. Every repeated thought strengthens a circuit. The more emotionally charged it is, the deeper it embeds. When those circuits align with negative emotions, fear, guilt, shame, they form what psychologists call core beliefs, invisible assumptions about who you are and what you deserve. These beliefs run quietly in the background, filtering every experience. If your code says, "I am unworthy," the brain edits reality to confirm it. Compliments sound hollow. Success feels undeserved. The program wins every time because it's running beneath awareness. But awareness is the debugger. When you catch the pattern and bring it into consciousness, you stop being the code and start being the programmer. Andrew Huberman often explains that repetition under emotion is the strongest driver of neural change. To rewrite a belief, you must engage both focus and feeling. This means creating new emotional experiences that contradict the old programming. For instance, instead of repeating, I am enough mechanically, anchor it in action, complete a task, set a boundary, express gratitude, and let the emotion of alignment sink in. Emotion seals the new code. Action makes it real. Rewriting the mind is not about denial or forced optimism. It's about constructing precision where there was vagueness. Replace general affirmations with clear instructions. The brain understands clarity. Instead of, "I will be better," say, "I will act with discipline today." The nervous system responds to direction, not abstraction. Each time you follow through, dopamine reinforces the new loop, and the old one begins to atrophy. Neural pruning removes the pathways that are no longer used. You are literally editing the architecture of your brain. Philosophically, this is what Descartes meant by restructuring thought through reason. Emotion creates the code, but logic refines it. When you combine awareness with intentional structure, your mind evolves from chaos to design. You stop reacting to reality and start composing it. The practice of daily reflection, journaling, meditation, or intentional silence acts as a mental compiler. It translates awareness into new wiring, line by line, day by day. Reprogramming the brain doesn't happen in a single revelation. It happens in consistency. Each moment you choose clarity over confusion, discipline over distraction, truth over habit, you're teaching your neurons to follow a different rhythm. The brain doesn't need drama to change. It needs repetition with attention. In time, the new code stabilizes. Old triggers lose their pull. Self-doubt fades into background noise. The mind begins to obey the clarity it once resisted. That's when you realize you never needed a new self. You only needed a new script. The brain is the hardware. Consciousness is the coder. And your thoughts are just instructions, waiting for you to write them differently. The silence beyond noise. There is a moment after all the questioning, reframing, and rewiring when the mind begins to quiet. At first it feels strange, almost wrong, because silence has become unfamiliar. You're so used to the constant internal commentary that its absence feels unnatural, like walking through a city after the power has gone out. But that stillness isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's the mind returning to its original state before fear, memory, and conditioning filled it with noise. The human brain produces nearly 70,000 thoughts a day, most of them recycled from yesterday. This endless mental chatter creates the illusion of aliveness, yet it drains energy. The silence beyond noise is not about stopping thought. It's about ceasing identification with it. When awareness deepens, thoughts pass like clouds, while consciousness remains unmoved beneath them. This state, once described by Stoics as inner order, corresponds biologically to alpha and theta brainwave activity, the rhythms of calm focus and creative insight. In this state, the body is relaxed, the nervous system is balanced, and perception becomes precise. You stop reacting to the world and start perceiving it as it is. Andrew Huberman calls this physiological calm, where the parasympathetic system takes the lead. Heart rate slows, breathing steadies, and the prefrontal cortex, your center of reasoning, regains command. From this calm foundation, clarity blooms naturally. You don't force it, you witness it. Neuroscience and philosophy converge here. Truth doesn't need noise to be heard. It needs stillness. The quieter the mind becomes, the more accurately it perceives reality. The Stoics believed peace was a form of discipline, not retreat. Marcus Aurelius meditated not to escape the empire's chaos, but to rule it wisely. Silence is the same for you. It's not withdrawal from life. It's re-entry with precision. When your mind stops fighting for control, your energy redirects toward creation, connection, and purpose. The silence beyond noise is where emotional intelligence matures, because emotion finally speaks without distortion. You can feel without drowning, think without spinning, act without doubt. This silence doesn't remove pain or challenge, it removes distortion. It's what allows you to face the storm without becoming the storm. You see thoughts for what they are, signals, not truths, and emotions for what they represent. Information, not identity. Life's volume lowers, but its meaning amplifies. The absence of inner noise makes space for something far deeper: intuition, wisdom, and a calm strength that doesn't depend on circumstance. When you touch this silence, you stop searching for peace because you realize it was never missing. It was buried under noise created by a brain that meant well but forgot who was in charge. The silence beyond noise isn't a destination, it's your default state rediscovered. A mind that has learned to think clearly no longer needs to shout, it simply knows. And from that knowing, you act not out of reaction, but from truth itself. The mind that learned to tell the truth. When the noise fades and the observer takes its rightful place, the mind begins to speak a new language, the language of truth. It no longer whispers fear disguised as caution or shame disguised as humility. It becomes clear, deliberate, honest. A mind that has learned to tell the truth is not a quiet mind, it is a precise one. It no longer hides behind excuses or emotional fog. It simply reflects reality as it is, without distortion, without defense. And in that accuracy, freedom appears. Truth in its purest form is not an intellectual concept. It's a biological alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction, your nervous system calms. The body stops bracing for contradiction. Cortisol lowers, dopamine stabilizes, focus sharpens. This physiological harmony is what ancient philosophers described as virtue, the state in which inner order mirrors outer order. To live in truth is to live without internal resistance. You stop being divided against yourself. René Descartes sought certainty through thought. You find it through awareness. You no longer need to analyze every idea or emotion. You sense when something is false because the body tenses and the breath shortens. You sense when something is true because it feels quiet. That stillness is not passivity, it's precision. Jordan Peterson might call it alignment with the logos, the structure of reality itself. To think truthfully is to act meaningfully, and to act meaningfully is to live coherently. The mind becomes an ally to existence instead of its interpreter. When the mind learns to tell the truth, it stops performing. It no longer invents stories to protect the ego or to manipulate outcomes. It accepts imperfection without turning it into identity. It admits fear without making it prophecy. It listens before it speaks. In this honesty, there is immense strength. Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to remain grounded in clarity when the world demands confusion. You realize that truth is not an ideal to reach, but a practice to maintain, moment by moment, thought by thought. The brain's reward system also transforms. Dopamine no longer spikes from escape or illusion. It stabilizes through integrity. You begin to experience pleasure in clarity itself, in knowing, in understanding, in choosing consciously. Every time you act in alignment with truth, your brain reinforces the pattern of authenticity. The mind that once rewarded lies for safety, now rewards honesty for stability. This is neuroplastic redemption, the transformation of instinct into awareness. Ultimately, this journey, from illusion to observation to silence, ends where it began, inside the mind. But now you see it for what it is, a tool, not a tyrant. You are not its servant, nor its enemy. You are its architect. The thoughts continue, the emotions fluctuate, but the relationship has changed. The mind has learned humility, to serve awareness instead of overshadowing it. And in that service, it becomes sacred. A mind that tells the truth doesn't promise a life without pain. It promises a life without confusion. You still face storms, but you no longer lose yourself in them. You act with intention, speak with clarity, and move through the world with the quiet certainty that you are no longer deceived. The brain serves consciousness, the voice serves truth, and life, finally, feels honest. That is not the end of thinking. It's the beginning of understanding.